Sounds like a GTO phone call.
You have 60 seconds remaining. No. Alrighty then. Now it's being live streamed on Facebook, folks. Cool. All right, we can start now. All right, welcome everyone. Welcome to Underground Scholar Student Spotlight Alumnus Edition. Today we have two amazing guest speakers, Alberto Lule and John Rodriguez. Excuse me, Alberto Lule and John Rodriguez. First, we want to start off with dropping folks' name, the city you're from, and the major you're studying at school. We also want to start with a statement. As you may know, during the last month, our community has been vigorously discussing on steps to make sure our schools are eliminating barriers and providing the support and opportunities that will ensure empowerment and success of students of color and other marginalized communities. That being said, we are here sharing this statement to acknowledge our brothers and sisters who are currently incarcerated. We also want to acknowledge our formerly incarcerated brothers and sisters who have not shared their stories. If you are a formerly incarcerated student who's interested in collaborating, please feel free to reach out. We're hoping to elevate our Black, Indigenous people of color, formerly incarcerated students' hustles. So shortly after USI was developed at UC Berkeley, formerly incarcerated students at UCLA developed a chapter. So at Berkeley, USI members graduated and spread throughout different UC chapters from graduate school. And they began building chapters all UC statewide, except for one, which is UC Merced. So if you are interested or are a student at UC Merced who's formerly incarcerated and is interested in starting a chapter down there, I will be dropping Azadea, who's a Berkeley Underground Scholars Director, and you're more than welcome to reach out to her. I'll definitely encourage folks, to tag team, build that community, and spread out. I think we are here definitely present to elevate other people's voices, and we need Merced as well to stay in the loop. With that being said, I'll be introducing Alberto Lule, who's our first guest speaker. Alberto Lule paroled from California prison after 13 years of incarceration and immediately enrolled in community college. Lule recently graduated from UCLA with a bachelor's degree in arts and a minor in visual and performing education. Lule's leadership and role at UCLA was being co-chair of the Underground Scholars Initiative and Bruin Underground Scholars Program. With that being said, welcome Alberto Lule by chatting the box, yay, or just, asking questions. I'll encourage you all to drop questions um, and ask questions and all that, comments, love, support, and feel free to add anything else, Alberto, if you want to introduce yourself personally.
No, thank you for the introduction. Yeah. So I majored in art and I minored in visual and performing arts education. A lot of that had to do with after when I got out, I knew I wanted to go back to school. I just didn't know why I wanted to go back to school. I didn't like the goal was to get there. And once there though, that's when other goals started like happening. But I didn't go into like the academic setting already with something in mind, like and pretty much like what I was doing in prison, I started wanting to do it out here in regards to artwork. So I majored in art. But once there it became something else. It became a whole different kind of like world, a bunch of different aspects of the disciplines and everything. Because I was just used to, doing pencil drawings, doing tattoos, doing little crafts that you learn to make, like in prison. And now I'm still making those, but now it's in a different setting. And because the artwork is in a different setting, it can now be used as a discussion, almost like a tool for discussion now. Not only can like a tattoo motor be used to make tattoos now within the museum setting or the gallery setting, it can now be used to spark a conversation about mass incarceration or the carceral system.
Yeah, thanks for
Yeah.
that. Would you be able to add on, tell us how long ago did you graduate and what have you been up to after
Well,
graduation?
I graduated in December. I just barely graduated. Um, and luckily, fortunately, because of the minor that I had, which is a visual and performing arts education, I was offered a job at UCLA by the VAPA program. And right now I'm teaching at UCLA Community Charter, which is a school over by MacArthur Park. It's a charter school. It's kind of like a, it's a kind of a school for like, marginalized communities, but it's so fun. I love it. It's not something that, like I said, it's not something that I was aiming to do. It's something that was just kind of like came into the path that I chose. It appeared there as in like I was doing things that I love to do, and it's something that just happened to be there. Like as you kind of progress, right? Because I'm still seeing it kind of as a progression, right? From being locked up, and it's something that kind of like grew out of this necessity to go back to school, a love for education, especially educating younger people about artwork, grew, and now I've had the fortune to actually teach, and that's what I'm doing right now. Is I'm a teaching artist. I only work once a week. It's a part-time job, but it's a start. You know.
I think one of the things that you said that really stood out to me the most is, I wasn't sure. And I think that's one of the things we want to emphasize to our students, who are navigating through like higher ed or just like a 4-year, 2-year, because I feel like, or let's put it like this, do you think you need to have like something one by one, like a whole timeline or something scripted, an agenda, like about your whole life to figure it out? Or how do you think you kind of took that to be where you're at?
I don't know. I think I've always kind of like taken, since getting out, I've kind of taken things one step at a time or one day at a time. That's like an old saying too. You hear all the older homies telling you that, take it one day at a time, homie, and like, you don't really know what that means until like you trying to take it one day at a time. Back in the day, you just living wild, right? I was living like 2 weeks at a time. I want to, you just go all day and all night, you don't even sleep. But like I guess I'm one of those students that and that's another thing too, is that I learned how to be like a student, right? And I learned how to be a student in prison. Like a lot of times, like when I was locked up, and I came into the prison setting with like, just a hard head, right? I wanted to go on missions. I wanted to take people off of the yard. I wanted to do things like, because I thought I was like I thought I was somebody. And then I realized I got into the place where there is people that are somebody. I realized I was just like a big nobody, right? And then I realized, like you start realizing things. That the first thing that happens in those type of places, they throw books at you. And if I wanted to read books, I would have just stayed in school, because that's one of the things that happens is you become a student of people that like that are older than you, that are wiser than you. And so I knew that I was a student, but then I wanted to be like, I wanted to try it as in the academic setting. In the academic setting, I really wanted to go back to school. I just didn't know what type of student I was until I got there. And once once I had like that student kind of like mindset, like that, then I can kind of place myself into different kind of like disciplines, right? A lot of the artwork that I do is interdisciplinary. I try to like, right now I'm like really trying to like study criminology, because I have like these artworks that kind of deal with tools of criminology. And now because I want to do artwork that has to do with like forensic fingerprint powder, now I want to learn like how that shit really works, in order to make myself better at it. Now I'm starting to like get into like forensics, and I want to get into like DNA sampling. And now, like all of these things start to like pop up where like one door leads to the next. And that's kind of like how it's been happening in my life. Right. I don't know if that answered your question, but
it did. And I think you continue to emphasize as well, like the identity of being a student, you get me? Like,
yeah.
I think that's so beautiful how we're all here just to get our education, you know, move forward. And how do you think your identity being a student has changed you, or has like changed the perspective of others? Especially
Um,
you have both identities. I mean, like
yeah,
formerly
yeah.
incarcerated. How do you think that empowers you?
But I think a lot of the artwork that I do has is based on that. It's based on identity,
Yeah.
and you know, growing up, even as a kid, like you get identities placed on you, like very early on. You know, you get name called at school when you're younger. You know, I had a gang name. You know, another identity placed on me. You know, because of the way you behave. Sometimes the homies will place a name on you. Um, so you grow up in these kind of like spaces where identities are always kind of like being put on you, placed on you, even by default. And even like with like, if you think about like police profiling, right? You know, I would get pulled over a lot. Like, why would I get pulled over a lot? Because of the way I look? I don't know. Probably because I was driving this big the Cadillac DeVille, one of those big huge body ones, you know. And then looking the way I look, it's like you already know, like, you know, most people are gonna identify me in a certain way. So you're always getting you're always getting identifiers placed on you. You're always getting kind of pigeonholed into all of these things. And one thing that I realized that I really wanted to do was create my own identity. And that's when I created, you know, when I talk about that stuff is I invented my own identity, and that's the student. I invented the student for myself.
Yeah.
You know, out of all of these other identities that were kind of like being placed by me, whether it was just like a child of illegal immigrants, you know, a gang member, a prisoner, an inmate, a parolee. Like now I'm gonna place my own identity. I'm the student, and I'm still learning right now. I'm applying to to MFA programs right now. So I'm still in the process. I'm still trying to be a student.
Oh, well, yep. I want you to hold before we go to our next.
Yeah.
Like, I want you to save that towards the end because I do still have a couple of questions to ask you. So thinking about your journey at UCLA, you know, what what did support mean to you, like being on campus, or what does support mean to you right now?
I don't know. Support was one of the biggest things that I think helped me. Um, when I first got out, and this was around the late May of 2016. Um, one of my homies, you know, from my neighborhood, he wanted to actually help me out. He didn't want to help me out the way other homies wanted to help me out. Because other homies, they wanted to help me out, but like in not the way that you would think, you know. Even though a lot of times when you're handed a weapon and you're handed like a bag of drugs, to them that's love. Like they wouldn't just do that to anybody, you know. That they're trying to help you out. But like me, I wasn't trying to like receive that type of help. Um, Another homie, he's like, "What do you really want to do?" I was like, "You know, I really want to go back to school." And he took me down to the community college. This was like a week after I got out, so it was pretty quick. And he helped me enroll, and he knew some people that worked there that they kind of set me up and kind of like guided me, took me by the hand, literally took me by the hand and like walked me to like a place, and like you got to sign these forms. And, you know, I was still really new. You know, I was very um you know, I don't know what other word to say, but I was afraid. I was afraid of being on that campus. I was afraid of all those young faces looking at me like, what is this old dude trying to do? uh, but
Yeah, that's
and yeah, and that's the type of support like that. You know, like he introduced me to someone else that cared. They introduced me to somebody else that cared, and eventually, you know, I had like a good little 5 people caring about what I'm doing. You know, and that's kind of hard to find sometimes. You know, because a lot of times people they don't care. A lot of the world can be very uncompassionate. You know, very merciless. You know, they show no mercy. You know, that's the type of environments where you grow in, where you grow up in, and also the type of environments where you end up at. Um, so like finding that, and then like out of Jesus was like, fortunately, like at Santa Barbara City College, there was a small program which is called Transitions, which you know focused on formerly incarcerated students. So it just kind of like happened to be there. I don't know. Sometimes I believe, things happen for a reason, but then being around other people that had also just gotten out, going to classes together, that's kind of like where I learned like that a support system within the academic space is valuable. It's important.
Yeah, and that's amazing. Like where that stood out was like community support, like people who cared, like actually wanting to be there, check up on you. Those are most important things because I think I was just anyone in general to be like, I want to keep moving forward, or just like I want to keep setting up goals for myself. I want to do things for myself. Um, but just for folks who are barely hopping on, these are two guest speakers, John Rodriguez and Alberto Lule. We are a Facebook Live, folks, so feel free to drop questions, anything like that, if you have for any of our guest speakers. But yeah, let's get back to you. You wanted to add anything else about that question?
Yeah, because really like from say like transitions, I think it's a summer program, so it wasn't big, um and after I was done with the summer classes, because that's when I enrolled, during the summer. um it was a little harder because during the fall, a lot more students, and everyone's kind of like taking care of their business. um once I got connected to like underground scholars, at Berkeley, and I became kind of an ambassador for underground scholars. So now I'm taking the word back. I'm taking the holy words of the homies upstate, bringing them down to Santa Barbara. Um, you feel like you're doing something, or you feel you're part of something. That's important. That's important, and it's important like in all aspects of like the academic setting, right? And it wasn't really the only place, right? I was also part of I was part of the art club, right? Or I was part of a writing club where not everyone there was formerly incarcerated or system impacted. It was just people that like to write, or in the case of art, it was just people that they're just like art nerds. They just wanted to talk about art.
Let me ask you this, Berto. How is, I think one of the biggest questions is they ask students in general when they're in class, like, hey, how do you balance like, just being a full-time student, and then being part of all these extracurricular activities? What's some advice you'll give to incoming freshmen, or more so like a transfer student? Like, because I feel like the first thing everyone wants to do is like, all right, hop on, get over involved, or like, all right, take all these classes, I get overwhelmed. And it's just like, all right, what's something you wish someone told you in your first year at UCLA that you wish you knew?
I would say like do what you can. Do
That
what you can, and don't like overexert yourself either. Like if you're the only one raising your hands for shit, like you're gonna be the only one doing shit. Like you're not, like try not to like, over overdo like what you can do, because that happens a lot too. Um, Me as like kind of like as a student, right? And not just that, but as somebody that has like a family, right? I'm married and I have a son. Um, a lot of times they came first, so a lot of times like I already knew like don't expect me at that meeting, or don't count me in for this shit because it's not gonna happen. Like, and sometimes you feel bad, right? You feel bad, like, oh man, I can't go tabling for the homies. But it's like, fuck, if you can't do it, you can't do it. You don't stress yourself out, because a lot of times your GPA will take a hit. You start putting the certain things before other things. For me, it was always just like get the classes in first, and then if there's time, then you can go and do these other things. But yeah, a lot of times I would find myself like doing more for things that had nothing to do with like my grade. Always keep in mind what you're there for. You're there for to get good grades, and you're there to like rock, and you're there to like smash the fucking course. Not really there to pass out flyers.
Yeah. How was it for you though to like build these boundaries? You get me? Like we want to be down for the community and everything, right? But we also want to like not fail with our own academics or just like, we want to have like a purpose or meaning or something like that. Like, how did you build those boundaries? Like, tell people like, no, like I'm failing, and what if someone out of nowhere is like, well, I'm failing too, dude. Like, but I'm still here. Like, how?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I wasn't failing.
That's a good
I
one.
never failed. No, like what I know what you mean is like it's hard to tell people no sometimes. That's all. And but you learn how to say that you learn how to do that stuff in prison. So I think I got a little help. I got a little help because sometimes in prison they're not gonna ask you to like pass out some flyers or go tabling. They're gonna ask you to do something. They're gonna do something way worse. So you learn like how to like keep those boundaries, how to move. And a lot of times they're like strategies. I don't know. A lot of times though, I think for me it's like I had like so much other things like that I feel um like by default like my family, like, oh, I can't do this shit. I gotta go home. Like I gotta go cook dinner for my kid. Like I got my bedtime's at 11. I can't do it. I'm sorry. Um, I guess the best thing that I can say is to not feel guilty about it. You know, the homies will look out. Somebody's always gonna step up. You know, so you don't have to overexert yourself on certain things like that. I think because a lot of the time, a lot of the org is there to lean on each other. Not to pressure each other into doing certain things.
No, that's
I don't
what.
know if that answered any of your question, but
I like how at the end you're like, I don't know if I answered your
yeah,
question.
I don't know.
No, I feel like everyone has gonna have a different answer. You get me to the questions I'll be asking, and I think it's fine.
Like nobody's gonna get mad at you if you say like, "I'm sorry, I can't do this. I gotta go study." Like,
Yeah, but at the end of it, like you graduate from UCLA, you get me? Like I wanna ask you, like this is a like one last question for you before we transition into John. What is one of your greatest accomplishments at UCLA? Or what is the biggest like what's something you feel so proud and be like, dang, I graduated from there. That's what I did. Like I left the
the whole thing is like a dream. The whole thing is like, I don't know. I don't. Like the admission rate for the art department at UCLA is 3%. They only let in, and they out of 1,200 applicants, they only let in how much, I don't even know, like less than 100, I think. Like they didn't let in, they don't let in a lot of people. So when I saw that statistic, I was like, shit, okay. And when I was asking my instructors for letters of recommendation, I felt that a lot of times like I was being overlooked or something, or like, like I was like kind of like that guy that nobody really talked to because I think I scared people. Or like, I was just like, somebody told me, you always look like you're mad. I was like, I'm not mad. This is how I look. Like, yeah, but you look mad. uh, um, but yeah, one of my instructors, he said I was gonna be okay, and he said, believe it or not, we've had our eye on you like this whole time. Like, we didn't just let you in because we just like randomly let people in. Like, we've known who you are, we know everything you do, and you're gonna be great. And when I heard that, it was kind of like justified everything that I had done. Like, okay, so they are watching. I thought they just kind of let me in and let me do whatever I want, but yeah, that's not the type of institution too. That's something that a lot of people that you kind of like forget, right? It's like they don't let in just anybody. Like that your application has to go through 3 different people to be even considered, right? Yeah, it goes through like 3 tiers
Yeah, it does.
of people, and so it's like, but you forget that, right? You forget that when you're like doing your classes or you're doing whatever you're doing, you forget that, like, yeah, the admission rate is 3%. That means only 3 people out of 100, right? 6 people out of 200. Am I doing the math right? 9 people out of 300. So it's like, it's not that many people. And I think that's probably like the greatest accomplishment was finishing, right, graduating, right, with a 3.95 GPA. But it's all right. That doesn't matter. It's not big.
We're noticing there's some questions on
Yeah.
chat. I'll be saving those questions and ask at the end for both of our
Okay.
guest speakers.
I'll just answer Danny's real quick.
Okay, go for it. Also,
I mentioned incarceration in every single question I answered. Yeah, I didn't let them forget that. But yeah, we can talk to about that later.
no worries. Name drop was just named right now. So we have Danny Murillo, who's one of the co-founders here from Underground Scholars. Thanks to him and many other individuals who co-founded Underground Scholars, this space was created. You get me? The space or students or representation and community wouldn't have not been here thanks to Danny. So just highlighting, emphasizing his name as well. So thanks for showing your support and love and being here. So lastly, Berto, say your full name, your degree you earned, and your year and the school you graduated, so folks can hear it loud and loud.
Okay, my name is Alberto Lule. I graduated from UCLA with a BA in art and a minor in visual and performing arts education with a 3.925 GPA. If I wasn't a transfer student, I would have gotten magna cum laude. But because I'm a transfer student, I guess that doesn't work. But we can talk about that later.
Interesting point. I'm definitely gonna look into that because I have no idea. I'm a transfer student as well. All right, so now we're again, thank you, Berto, for sharing about yourself. Now we're transitioning to John. John Rodriguez is a 2020 graduate of UCLA with an undergraduate degree in English. He is a non-traditional transfer student who completed most of his transfer requirements while incarcerated, and upon release, continued to pursue his higher education. Through writing and performance art, he aims to make higher education accessible to our incarcerated communities, members, and to alleviate the stigma associated with incarceration. He plans to teach university-level courses inside prison, using art as a form of therapy and education. He currently serves as the program director for a re-entry department at St. John's Well Child and Family Center. Give it up to John. Burr, 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 burr.
Thank you for having me.
So John, feel free to give yourself, I gave you an intro, but is there anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I'll start off with kind of like the way Berto took it. So I before transferring to UCLA, I was an incarcerated student. I'm technically a high school dropout. Wasn't allowed to graduate because I went in when I was 17 years old. And because of that, I was kind of forced to get my GED. Not that I wanted it, and not that there's nothing wrong with the GED, but I was really looking forward to getting my high school diploma, but never did. So while inside, I kind of like Berto had mentioned, I was in New Folsom, and you begin to run into people who have been there for a very long time. And surprisingly, the things that I guess we could easily call them, just for terminology, just the OGs that were there. A lot of the times, they were the ones that used to kind of just push me to go to school. At the time, I didn't know why. It was really, really interesting the way they used to pick my brain and kind of just used to pass books under the door randomly. And I'll pick them up, and there was nothing else to do, so I started reading them. But with time, I finally ended up getting my GED, and I was very, very, very fortunate to transfer to a prison, which was Ironwood. It's one of the very few that had a free lending library, and that I had an AA degree program through Palo Verde College that not only allotted free courses, but that the courses that were offered there were from an accredited college that were transferable. And it wasn't very difficult to transfer afterwards. So when I came home, I didn't have to go back to community college, but I chose to just so that I could work on some upper division units. And the main reason was so that I can know what it feels like to be in a classroom again, because it had been a long ass time since I had been around people, especially in a classroom setting.
Thanks, John, for sharing that. I noticed you said that your name is John and you're working at St. John's. That's so interesting, right?
I know, no religious association, just FYI.
Interesting how the universe works. But you mentioned about, you know, starting at community college. No one had to tell you to go to community college, right? But one thing is that you said you missed the classroom setting. Um, you mind sharing with folks? Because I only asked this because I there's folks who kind of gone through the traditional route, going through K to 12, whatever, straight to a 4 year. But I'm hoping that you can somewhat like emphasize with folks, what's so like the detachment or the attachment to a classroom setting, like how important it is, or how folks.
Yeah, yeah. So for me, the hard part, I remember when I got to Ironwood, and I'll transition into the community college setting like out here. But when I first got to Ironwood, I remember the system wasn't really great there. The college system, even though it was run by the people inside, those that were considered inmates, and the thing was is that I just remember somebody just coming dropping by, dropping off 3 books and 3 different packets. At the time, I didn't know that they were called syllabus or syllabi or syllabuses. They're all the same. Um, and I didn't even know what a unit was. And so I just remember being in my cell, um, taking a pre-algebra class because I didn't score high enough. And I remember I stood up the whole night, and for like the next 2 days, I was in my cell. I mean, I would come out to yard, but then when I would go back, I was struggling with one problem. And I would ask around, not many people knew how to do it. And I just remember that feeling of didn't have not having the support system, right? Not having a teacher or professor that I can turn to and say, hey, how do you do this? Um, Luckily, later on down the line, I found more folks that were doing college classes individually. So we would do peer groups, study groups with them. But when I would do my English papers, sometimes I'll be halfway through the semester and I would get my very first piece of feedback from a professor and says, hey, can you do this instead? I'm like, I'm already done with the course pretty much. And so that to me was very, very frustrating to not being able to raise my hand in class, to challenge a professor, to ask questions, to ask for clarity, to get immediate feedback. And so when I went to Santa Monica College, and to me it was just kind of surreal to like one to sit in a classroom, right, and being able to raise your hand and being called by your first name. To me, that's always surreal. Um, and then to actually have somebody that wants to listen to you. And for me, it was also really, really trippy that most people in those classrooms, like I think I get it in the sense that people are showing up to school. A lot of these people that go to school, it's cultural for them. They just show up. They don't know why they're doing it. But for a lot of, I could say for myself, I knew why I was there. And so like I used to ask questions. I didn't care. And little by little, it was crazy to see that like a lot of my questions or the way I was thinking was being validated or also challenged. And so to me, that felt really, really good, especially all the younger like students, right? Um, they'll start turning to you and be like, hey, do you want to study after class, or do you want to come into our study group? When in the beginning, when I first show up, they'd be all like, oh, look, that's the older dude. Like, let's stay away from him. So it was cool to kind of get that recognition, like, okay, I know what I'm doing.
Dang, yeah. Two things is that it's crazy. The world's so small. Because I transferred from Santa Monica College, so we never bumped into each other. We probably had, and I'm grateful to have known both of you here at UCLA. And two, like I guess you mentioned about like the students in your class. Um, how does it feel for you? Like, what was the distance? Because I know you are not a non-traditional students. How do you feel like that might have impacted you or encourage other students? Because basically people reached out to you and saying like, okay, here you can be my study buddy or something. But in some ways, what were some barriers of being a non-traditional student?
I mean, for me, I mean, that took time. I think it took time to build their trust, especially to like gain that label as a student, kind of like what Berto was talking about. But in the beginning, I just felt like disoriented. Like they would talk about like Google Docs. I had no idea what the hell Google Docs were. They're talking about share this, share that. I'm still running on an Android, and people used to get upset because I was the only one with an Android. Everybody had iPhones, and so I messed up the group messages. Um, I had no idea, right? I'm just like, nah, give me your number, and then not knowing that asking for somebody's number was kind of weird. Um, and then a lot of the other stuff too was in class, especially when professors and when the rest of the group used to bring up things, especially when they bring up situations like events, and they talk about like, hey, remember when this person was elected president? or what were you doing when this event happened? um, for me, I felt uncomfortable because almost everything that I would refer back to was in prison. So like, oh, I remember when I was on my bunk, or I was doing this on the yard, or this and that. But I didn't want to vocalize it, right? Because I'd be like, these people have no fucking clue what I'm talking about. Um, so that was a really weird part. But after time, especially like once being on campus, running into Berto, running into everybody else in the group right there at UCLA with underground scholars, um, I noticed that the way I carried myself began to shift in the sense that in the past I used to be, in all honesty, I used to be kind of afraid to show that part of me. Um, but then after I began to engage with people, especially like Berto, I used to always see the way he used to like walk with it on his sleeve. That encouraged me to just be like, you know what, I am formerly incarcerated, and what it's something for me that it gave me more strength. If anything, you know what, I'm proud to be formerly incarcerated in that sense, because I know what I had to overcome to be here. So yeah,
Yeah,
I don't
no,
know where I went with that, but yeah.
no, I appreciate that. I definitely heard, what is it, over here, Berto smiling when you're like Google Docs and Gmail and all this other stuff, or when you had the Android. Um, Dang. See, so I think that's one of the things I do want to emphasize. Like, everyone's gonna have these different stories, right? As soon as someone starts telling their story, folks who don't come from these communities start picking up on things like, all right, you just transitioned from, prison to school, and like some of these things you didn't know, like the lingo or what's like technology, and they expect a student who's formerly incarcerated at university to adapt so quick, right? And it's crazy. Actually, you know what? It's not crazy because you made it at UCLA and you're there at UCLA and you did all these great things. And I think that should not surprise anyone. Um, and one thing I want to ask you, thinking about your journey at UCLA, what did support mean to you?
Um, to me, the community we had, it really helped ground me. Um, I think kind of like where I'm gonna reference Bertola because he speaks on a lot of the things that happen. I think going as a student and transitioning through university. But once you get there and you get the ball rolling, you start going to class. Um, it becomes like clockwork, and then you can get lost in that system. Um, but for me was meeting, having that community, that support group of specifically of folks that are formerly incarcerated. Um, to me it was cool because I could use the language I use. Um, I can talk shit. Um, I could just show up, and I know that I wouldn't be judged. And for me, that meant the world. And then aside from that, um, the support I had also came from other areas on campus. Specifically for me, is that I had strong supporters in writing programs right there in the humanities building, which they backed me up a lot, knowing my background and not being afraid to give me a job. Um, and for me, I was a writing tutor, and I used to trip out because I used to sit down with international students that I know paid double the tuition cost to sit here. And me, I think about it, I'm like, damn, like less than a year and a half ago, I was in a cell and now I'm sitting down with this other person assisting them. To me, that was crazy. It just blew my mind. I was like, who would have thought? I'm like, I wish their parents don't know because their parents would probably be upset. But it was just funny to me. Like, it's crazy. But when you mention support, it was those people in those positions who supported me, who believed in what I could do and my capabilities. And so they entrusted me with those positions. And so I'm very happy and thankful for those individuals, not just underground scholars, but also the community support that you need on campus. Us as students, we can only do so much. Um, we'll go through hell and back for each other, but we also need the foundation there to support us too.
Yeah, honestly, that's true because I don't think no one should be defined by like, their economic status, their background, anything like that. It's like, um, I'm gonna keep repeating it because at the end of it, we're all students here on campus. Like we're all trying to graduate, get our bachelor's, work, and just be financially stable. Like, well, that's one of my goals. I don't know if it's either for y'all, but I'm pretty sure we can all resonate with this. Um, and it's astonishing where like you have that moment because that's where Berto mentioned as well, like having that moment of realization, like, dang, I'm a student here already. And would you say, was that like the moment when you were at the writing center, it clicked? Like, you're a student here at UCLA.
No, not really. I think while I was there, I still even now I still don't feel like it was just like it's just a blur. Um, even when I got accepted, I didn't really know what it meant. Um, like I didn't really have nobody to share the news with. I remember I went home and told my mom, but my mom doesn't know what that is, right? I think I mentioned it to y'all where I was like, "Hey, mom, I got accepted to UCLA," and she's just like, "You hungry? ¿Tienes hambre? Do you want something?" And I was just like, "Damn, like I don't know," but I just applied on the Rift and just like, you know what, screw it, I'm gonna try it. And again, I didn't really want to apply, but I had supporters who pushed me to apply. Um, and then yeah, I don't think it really dawned on me until afterwards. I think for me, I was fortunate to live near campus, so I used to walk home in the morning, early in the morning. I mean, walk to class early in the morning, and walking really, really early. It's a little chilly over there, and I remember that little chilly, the little chilliness, kind of reminds me of like going to the yard early in the morning, and I'd just be walking, and I'm walking by myself, and I'm just like that same sunset because I used to be in the desert, so I used to see that same sunset, and I used to just be like, damn, I'm actually here. You know what I mean? And I had the opportunity to wake up today, being able to pick the color of my clothes, different types of clothes, had options to choose what I want to eat. And to me, it was just like, those are the moments I used to sit down like by myself and just be like, you know, I'm thankful to be here because I know there's so many people that don't have this option that I know deserve to be here. They're just currently incarcerated and they don't have the same privileges I do.
Thanks for sharing that. I'm gonna ask you the same question that Danny asked to Berto about in your personal statement. Did you use that you were incarcerated?
Yes, every single response that I had involved my incarceration. Um, but I didn't just say, "Hey, I was busted," and that's that, and left it at that. But I would explain what it meant, and in the beginning was kind of hard for me to apply because in some parts of the application they want to know how is it that you had moments of leadership, maybe you had extracurricular activities, and I'm like, I've been when I applied, I was like, I've been out 3 months, so what am I going to put on my application? And so I had to kind of just really sit down and think about the things that I was doing inside and kind of organizing in there with community college students, building a program that was ran by us that supported the students there inside and getting study groups together and whatnot. And then I was like, oh shit, we've actually been doing this already. We just didn't have a title for it or nothing. We were just looking out for one another. So I began to use that and put that in my application and say these are the things that I was doing. And so that's how most of my responses really reflected about the things that I was doing inside prison.
Awesome. I want to loop in both of you, but before I loop in both of you, John, can you share one of your greatest accomplishments at UCLA, or what are you most proud of? And then later state your year, your graduation, the school you graduated, and so on.
Um, Let me see. I mean, you know what? I'm really proud to what well one of them was the writing center, right? To have been there. And then I'm also really proud to have let myself to afforded myself the opportunity to be happy. Um, because for a minute while I first showed up to UCLA, I was very uncomfortable there. I was uncomfortable because I don't know, I was fresh home, so I was still had kind of, I guess we would term what that survivor's guilt is. So I still felt very, very horrible in the sense that I knew I was out there, but I still had the ones that I really closely, the ones that I really closely loved and still love. I know that they were inside, but I remember writing letters to them and sending them pictures, and they'd be like, "Man, you don't be smiling in your pictures. You don't do a lot of these things." And they're like, "Take more pictures. Go hang out with more people. Come send it to us. Send it to us." And so I was happy that by the end, I mean, before COVID hit, I was actually having fun. I was doing things outside of school, not just studying every day and night. I would study on the weekends, right? Um, but I gave myself the opportunity to have fun, and so I'm really proud of that. And yeah. And what was the second part, Ritz?
The last part is say it loud and proud. The school you graduated, the year, the degree you earned. So then Facebook Live and our YouTube channel can hear it.
So I graduated with the major in English, a minor in Chicano studies, and I'm a graduating class of 2020 at UCLA.
Ooh, ooh. All right, now looping both of you in. Were either of you afraid of using, you know, um, being incarcerated in your personal statements?
Um, wait, did you ask if I was uh, afraid?
Like, were you worried of like in your personal statement saying like, "Oh, my name is this. I'm formerly incarcerated." Like, what made you like?
No. My thing was that I feel that, and I feel it on a very deep level, deep personal level, is that you gain knowledge in the prison space that a lot of people out here they need to know that. And so my whole thing was like, you need me, like how much do you need me, because I have something that I'm willing to share with you. um and so my whole mindset was like, how much do you need me, and who's willing to be the courageous one and accept this guy, because they would benefit. So like my whole mindset was like, they need me. They're gonna benefit from whoever picks me up, is that they're gonna benefit from me. So I had no fear of like explaining that, and I still don't now. I mean, everybody I talk to, but even people that don't ask, I usually just like let them know, just in case, because a lot of people, there has been some people where like when they found out that had been busted, I don't they kind of like didn't talk to me no more. So I was like, oh, okay. Um, so now it's like, before I get those feelings hurt again, I'm gonna let you know, like, hey, I've been busted. So if you like me, just know that. um, but I do feel that people that experience those things in the prison setting, um, have something to give to the world,
Yeah,
and it's valuable, and a lot of people don't know how valuable it is, and I think these institutions are starting to realize that too. um, and so people like Danny and other people that were kind of in it a little before everyone, when they kind of had to go through this the other times. Right now we're living in times where like there's a lot of love, for this type of thing, but I'm sure in the past there wasn't. um but right now I think a lot of institutions are starting to realize like the value that individuals that survive these prison yards have, and what they're willing to do to give you that, right? I want to give you this knowledge, but you have to pay for my education first.
nice. Love that.
I wasn't afraid. No, every single question that I had to answer in my personal statements had to do with that, and that was from so much time being spent. Like one of them was like, "Have you ever had to be creative in your life?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course. I know how to be creative." One time I made like a lighter out of like a pencil. One time I knew this guy that made Pruno out of shampoo. Not probably not shampoo, but there's some pretty talented guys, but um every single question, yeah, it's like, for me it's like wearing it. I wear it like a badge of honor now. It's not really something that I'm ashamed of. It's something that I bring up in case you need some knowledge, because I got some for you if you want it.
Yeah, definitely. I think um, you and many other, I want to say like leaders on campus who are formerly incarcerated, allowing yourselves to share your stories makes other feel comfortable and empowered. So don't forget that. Go ahead, John. I think you unmute yourself. um, I want to ask you, like I asked Berto, like, were you afraid of using writing down your personal statement being formerly incarcerated?
No,
Worries?
no, I wasn't, and I feel like I really didn't have a choice. because all of my experiences up to that point had largely been in prison. I kind of grew up in prison, so everything from that point, right before that I got out, the only experiences I could really talk about were the things in there, and so I felt like I couldn't really talk about the things out here. So in that sense, I mean, I wasn't afraid. To me, it was just normal. Like, hey, this is what I really went through, and this is what I have to talk about, and this is how those experiences relate to these questions that you're asking. And so that's the way I kind of took it. The only thing I was concerned about, I think, only one time was I had applied to USC also, and I got accepted. Um, but before I could get in, I had to talk to their dean, and then they had a meet several meetings with their police department. And I know that that functioned differently because they're a private school, and I just remember having to go through that weird process. It felt like I was going through, like, I haven't been through board, but I've done board preparation classes, and it felt like I was going through that process. I was getting asked, "How old were you? What'd you do? How did you feel in the moment? Um, do you feel remorse?" And I was like, what the hell is this? And so for that reason, I declined. I didn't want to go to a school that was going to dig into my history, because at the end of the day, I'm formally incarcerated, and I'm not afraid to say it. But I paid my debt to society, and if there's a record of it or not, it shouldn't be pinned against me, right? I served my time, and that should be the end of it. But we know that going through these systems, that's not necessarily the case. Um, and so, yeah, that was the only concern. And then the only concern after that was at UCLA it wasn't with the university, but I was more concerned about my parole officer, because I was still on parole, and I was just afraid that I wouldn't be able to live on campus.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Um,
Let me like
go ahead.
just add on. Let me add on to that, because I think that what's also important that needs to be said though is that, you know, the Underground Scholars Initiative, and then the Underground Scholars programs that are starting to be created in some of these UCs are created for people that, you know, just be, you know, the program exists for resources that you don't have to identify if you don't want to. And, you know, there's still kind of like a big stigma that happens behind all that. You know, some people, they don't want to identify. I don't want people to know like they've been locked up. Like that's not something that, you know, not everyone is, you know, as crazy as me and John that love to run around and tell people like, yeah, I've been in prison for so long. Like, not everyone wants to do that, but that doesn't mean that they should be denied resources for you know for being, you know, formerly incarcerated. And I think that that's one of like the strengths of Underground Scholars Initiative and the Underground Scholars programs that are being created. You know, like I don't feel like you have to identify to get you those resources.
Yeah, and I think this allows me to kind of transition into the next question. Um, you point out that, like, this shouldn't be like a huge barrier for formerly incarcerated students. What other things shouldn't be like happening at a UC system or just like private or public school that creates another barrier or burden to a formerly incarcerated student, that you think that should be happening now, not like what I always bust, like, oh, 5 years from 10 years, like, because y'all graduated already, right? There's still formerly incarcerated students here at UCLA. Um, what do you hope things change? Like, what are some hopes of yours? Things change on campus, like UC level or anything in general for students who are formerly incarcerated.
That's a loaded question, Ritz.
That's why I saved it to the end. But whatever you want to answer. If not, we can transition to a next question.
Well, I mean, for sure, they should be number one. I think they should have the right to just be students. That's if they're on parole, probation specifically, or have a record. But for those two specific groups, if you're on parole, probation, that shouldn't hinder your lifestyle as a student. Specifically, if you have to go report, or have your parole officer show up. Maybe the dude wants to show up on campus to make sure that you're there. It's all these weird things that the average person doesn't have to go through. So I think for sure that there should be a set agreement that they shouldn't be able to, at least any type of government agency shouldn't be able to intrude onto your bounds as a student. So At least that's my take on that. And for sure, not having to check any boxes. I'll give you a quick example. We had the prison education program there at UCLA. And the first time that I had applied to take a course that was in Barry J. Neidorf Juvenile Hall, I got denied because I was on parole. Um, but if any other student would have applied, they would have got in. And so for me, I felt like I deserved to be there. One, because I had gone through that system, right? And then they're gonna let some random student, which is fine. But to me, I was like, I feel like I can relate more to these students. I can build a better understanding. But just because of my history, something that was completely over with, I wasn't able to get in. And so I feel for sure like those types of barriers. And I know that they're dealing with government agencies, specifically with probation. I know they have to deal with them, but a UCLA student is a UCLA student. It shouldn't be no different for anybody else.
Yeah, that I mean the that question, like there's so much like that can be answered toward that question, right? Mine would just be a simple like more resources, you know. Um, I'm not sure. I think
Money.
yeah, money. Give us money. We want all the monies.
And definitely endless. And we are limited at time. So for sure, we want to thank everyone who's here present. Feel free to, drop your last minute thoughts here. Um, and, I guess last question now, is there anything, oops, wrong question. What are some things you wish people outside the community knew about you or about formerly incarcerated people within just like one or two sentences? Because we're kind of like almost out of time.
Yeah. No, what I really want to do is congratulate John and for graduating, because see, John, I was at the same prison that John was at. We weren't there together, but we went through the same little like type of like college kind of experience. When he was talking about like needing to do the homework all by yourself, and then nobody there to help you because nobody knows how to do it either. You go like, hey, can you help me on this problem? He's like, I don't know. Like, let's go ask this guy. And pretty soon there's like 5 of us walking around asking who knows math. And then it came to the point where like I was the one that people were going to the cell to be like, hey, can you help us on this problem? I'm like, yeah, I think I can help you with that one. And now we both have graduated from UCLA, formerly incarcerated students graduating from UCLA. I think that's just like that's big, right? I think that's like a big thing. Like it's just like a big, I don't think it's coincidence. It's just like, it's too, it's just, the coincidences are weird, to put it that way, if it's not a coincidence. But really, I wanted to like, just like take a moment and like realize that like UCLA just got a couple of, gangsters graduated from that fucking school. So, and it's going to happen. It's going to keep happening,
For sure, folks. You're more than welcome to linger and stay around, but we're closing this down. So does anyone have any last minute comments before we end this?
Yeah, I do.
Go ahead, Albert.
All right. I'm Albert Nava. I'm from UCSD, Underground Scholars. I'm one of the ones that started it, me and Jose. And I just congratulate you hearing your stories, because I'm like that. When I wrote my statement to come in here, I wrote down I did 30 years in prison. You know what I mean? So I wasn't afraid to say it. I graduated now with ethnic studies. I applied for a PhD here in sociology, teach them about mass incarceration, teach them about 3 strikes, which I got fucking like 25 to life for a petty theft. So, I did my 17 years and all these maximum securities. But you know what? I'm going to help out a lot of people come in here. Watch. You'll see. So like, I'm telling you, I already did 7 workshops already with all these community colleges right here. And I tell them, if I can make it, you can make it. Don't be stressing out on all this homework, you know what I mean? You can skim all these goddamn fucking books if you want, So like, I'm just gonna tell them the real truth. I skim all my books. So, I'm telling you, it ain't hard. It's all in the mind. So I'm I'm happy to be here for a few, speak my mind for a few minutes. And all I know is that I got a meeting this Friday with Southwestern College right here in San Diego, and I'm gonna help out some people from Rising. Wow, yeah, I'm gonna help them out. They're gonna come in here, but I'm glad that Marisa had this event. It's helping out people get more knowledge, and that's it.
Yeah, much love, Albert. Thank you for helping out. Albert's also an Underground Scholars member, helping out in our statewide call. So appreciate you here. Lastly, let me share y'all our upcoming event. If y'all haven't checked out our IG page, our next event is Underground Scholars Student Spotlight, formerly Incarcerated Women's Edition. So feel free to RSVP on Friday, February 19th from 5 to 6 p.m., folks. Thank you so much for being here, and I'm going to stop recording.